Good day, everybody. It is, it's, no, Saturday. I don't want to say Friday, but I was like, no, that was yesterday. This particular vlog is not going to be about work or anything like that. It is going to be about my changes. Now, I have already talked to you about my dietary changes, and a lot of you have been like, well, I don't want to say you haven't given me anything to think about, because you have. But for some reason, a lot of you are worrying about me doing a keto diet. Excuse me for 1 second. I want to bring my notebook over here and whatnot so I can read from it. Right now, a lot of you were talking about keto diet. I'm not interested in just a purely keto diet. I'm actually, and I don't know if I talked to you guys about this, so I'm just going to rehash it. The diet that I'm looking at is more of, more like a almost Viking-like diet, or I don't call it old school diet, because the Viking heritage that runs through me, a lot of things that have to do with the Vikings speak louder than most of my background, my heritage or whatnot. And I'm not saying that I'm listening to voices, because that's not the case. It's not voices. It's just something about the whole Viking era, the whole Viking persona, I guess you'd say. And a lot of people have the Viking persona all kinds of backwards. Excuse me 1 second. I don't have tissues in here. Where is my handkerchief from earlier? Oh, here it is. Oh, sorry. It's a combination of allergies. The last couple days have been out of control, so excuse me. So I talked about what Vikings ate, or basically their meals and things like that. And they only had 2 meals per day, one huge breakfast and then one at the end of the day. And if they ate anything during the middle of the day or throughout the day, it was just enough, like a handful of grain or something like that, granola or whatever, their version of granola, which was just probably eating straight grain. But the one video I did that talked about diets, I kind of try to give you a breakdown of a Viking diet and what it consisted of. So if you want to go back and refer to that one. But today's basic conversation, I'm going to have to trim that nose hair or something. Excuse me. Today's conversation has to do with the mental aspect of the changes that I'm trying to go through. Now, there's a book that I gotta see if I can order it, or if Jerry Ann ordered it, because I talked to her about it. But it's a book entitled The Modern Day Viking. Now, what little I got to read of it from the synopsis online, is this gentleman basically started to change his mindset, the way the Vikings, or what was described as a Viking mindset from the various sagas, into something that if there was a person from the Viking era brung into our era with the same mindset, but the skills of a modern day person, but the same mindset of a Viking. And he came up with, and I even looked it up because somebody else who was doing some research on the Vikings came up with, I'm going to count these because I can't remember. And I'll break them down, but I'll say what they are: bravery, intelligence, strength, traveling, and eating and looking like a Viking. Now, a lot of people might think that the Viking mindset, or what the Vikings were as a lot of people think they are, wouldn't work. And now I'll tell you why. Because a lot of what we know about Vikings comes from Hollywood and their depicting of the Vikings in a totally and utterly wrong. They weren't brutish. They weren't barbaric. They weren't people who just went out and slaughtered. They weren't mindless people. Yes, they were romantic and they were warriors, but they were seafarers. They were farmers. They were family men. They were traders. There's a lot of things that we're just now learning about the real Vikings. And right now, the closest thing that we have for entertainment purposes is the History Channel's, the Viking History Channel series, The Vikings. They follow the sagas of Ragnar Lothbrok. He was an actual Viking character. And we found the History Channel found the sagas and information about Ragnar Lothbrok and turned it into a TV series. Now, it's not all like kid glove stuff. It's got a lot of brutality. It's got a lot of fight scenes. It's got a lot of romantic, excuse the word, sexual scenes and whatnot. But between the gentleman who wrote the book I'm looking at and the sagas and all the different stuff that historians and archaeologists and even people who still live with this mindset in Scandinavia have these 6 different things. Now, the first one they have, bravery. Now, anybody can sit there and go, "Oh, I'm a brave person," really. Do you face your fears on a daily basis? Do you stand your ground on a daily basis? Do you face the unknown with the fearlessness, the standing your ground no matter what the unknown brings to you? That's the bravery aspect of the Vikings. They were fearless in everything. Fearless in their exploration, fearless in combat, fearless in their day-to-day lives. Because you got to realize, these people came from a harsh, unforgiving land. 800 to 1600 AD, these people lived either through strife, through hardships, through conquests, through the fact that they didn't know what the next day was going to bring. Scandinavia and the areas that the Vikings are from are so close to the Arctic Circle or within the Arctic Circle that their weather was harsh. So their food sources were hard to find, hard to grow. And they grew what they could in their harsh landscape, which was basically oats, wheat, barley, and there was a third grain. Wheat, barley, not hops. I can't remember what the third grain was that makes up most of their diet. But these were the only things that could grow produce-wise, other than the wild produce and some of the other things that they can grow, like cabbage and carrots and certain other kinds of things that they grew up there. And by the way, their carrots were either white or purple. Orange carrots didn't come around to the United States. It had to do with something to do with the soil. So, I mean, these people had to go out and hunt. And sometimes some of the things that they hunted wanted to hunt them, like bear. Caribou was not something that you can easily just, walk up to and hit with a spear or a rock or something like that. You had to be really stealthy at it. Things like that. And of course, they had fish in their diet too, so they had to be avid, if not expert, fishermen. So they had to brave the wilds, the cold, the bitter, the harshness of their landscape. Plus, they had to face the unknowns of their land was getting too overpopulated, so they had to learn how to spread out. So they conquered. I mean, historians have found as far west on the compass as the Americas, Iceland, Greenland, the UK. They conquered and established settlements on those locations. Then, as far east from their landscape, from their territory as the Baltics, Turkey. They've even found evidence of Norse traders on the Silk Road, which was basically in between Istanbul and China. And as far south as the Mediterranean. So these people were not afraid to face the unknown. In fact, they relished the adventure of seeing what was beyond the horizon and going as far as they could on boats that were more advanced than any other boat sailing around the oceans at the time. Even more advanced than the boats down in Greece and Egypt, down in the Mediterranean. Because these boats had Viking boats, the Viking longboat, which was the premier advanced boat of the time, was designed and set up in such a way that it can handle rough seas, calm seas, frozen seas. These boats were not your rinky-dink little rowboats. These were like, we're going to go out and conquer that ocean and tell that ocean it is ours. That's their bravado, their bravery and bravado. Now, their intelligence. I was just talking about some of their intelligence. These men, these people, and I don't mean just the men, because the women were just as fierce. And women warriors for the Vikings were called shield maidens. Shield maidens. Not that I'm just going to hold my shield up so the man can do all the battles, but no. These women would take a shield and a axe, sword, or spear and stand right next to the man, stabbing, poking, slicing and dicing and doing whatever they had to do to win the battle right next to their male counterparts. So, in fact, Viking women that went on raids with the men because of the fact that they're either single or their children were old enough to take care of the farm while mom and dad were doing their thing, were treated as equals amongst the Viking people. Back then, when the rest of the world were treating women as lessers, women were treated as equals. But their intelligence, they studied the landscape, they studied whatever knowledge they can get their hands on. They learned and studied everything and anything they can find. In fact, the sagas tell of Ragnar Lothbrok basically watching a battle, the first wave, as you might want to put it, to see how the enemy reacts and their reaction and counterreaction. And that's how he won most of his battles, because he learned by watching and studying movements and activities. So they weren't just blind, let's go in there and see how far we can go before we get killed. They were pretty smart for the time. In fact, they were smart enough to learn from their counterparts, their foreign counterparts, languages, trade skills, merchant skills, things like that. And we wonder why the Norwegians and the Scandinavians are so far advanced in like technology and recycling and basically environmental practices that help the environment. Then there was their strength aspect, and I don't mean just physical strength, I mean mental and physical strength. Now, their mind and body, they were smart, they were strong. Basically, they would be the equivalency of, I'm trying to compare them to something of modern day times. They'd basically be the equivalency of a bulldozer with a smart computer. Okay? They knew where to go and they know how to do it, and they would just plow through. Um, that's kind of a crude, example, but it's the only thing my brain can think of real quick. They were hard workers. I mean, they tilled the land and farmed the land and dealt with harsh environments, and then they would go during the warmer season to England, the northern part of England or northern part of the UK, and raid and conquer and pillage, and they would do the same thing along the western seaboard, up and down between their homeland in Scandinavia, all the way down to modern day Spain and Portugal into the Mediterranean, and bring back treasures of one form or another from foreign lands. And then they were hardy enough and strong enough to survive a harsh ocean to discover and settle Iceland and Greenland, even though they're saying that their settlements in Greenland did not last that long, because Greenland is a whole lot harsher than Iceland. And Iceland, like most people nowadays, realize that Iceland is a land of ice and fire. But that right there is like, okay, my mind, I'm getting old and my mind is slipping. And so I've decided to start playing less just mindless games and start like doing word search puzzles or word puzzles or things that make you think. And then my body, well, I haven't started on my body yet, but I want to start getting information on doing home workouts, whether I use an app online on my phone or whatever. And I'm pretty sure a lot of that physical therapy that I've done in the past will come into play on my back and whatnot. But yeah, I gotta strengthen my body and I gotta strengthen my mind. And if that means playing more word games and doing word search puzzles and stuff like that, then so be it. I want to be able to survive. I mean, I can now say that I have outlived my father and most of his brothers and sisters. And they say it skips a generation, the bloodborne illnesses and the diabetes and heart problems and all that stuff. So far, my generation, which includes me and 5 cousins that I can think of, 6 cousins maybe, that have outlived our parents by a couple of years, if not more. And I'd like to see, my grandfather passed away when he was in his 90s. I would love to see my 90s. I don't know what the world's going to be like in 40, 42, 43 years. But hey, if I can get my brain and my physical health back in order, yeah, there's a good strong chance that I could. I mean, I don't smoke anymore. I can't because of bronchial problems. I used to smoke way back in my teens and 20s. I drink rarely. I mean, the Bible, I use the Bible when it comes to this. The Bible, and even the I found that the Viking saga say the same thing as the Bible. Don't consume so much liquor. If you're going to consume liquor, wine, especially, they don't talk about beer because this is before beer was a thing. Well, no, they had ale. They had ale, which was a version, a type of beer back in the Renaissance, pre-Renaissance era. But the Vikings in the Bible say the same thing. Don't consume too much. The Vikings especially say don't consume so much that you've basically lost your wits. Because if you lose your wits, you get into a fight without your wits, you're basically a goner. But yeah, everything I've read, Bible, the Vikings, and a lot of other different things, they do say, yeah, go ahead and consume a glass of wine with your meal, because the fermentation of the wine actually helps the digestive system. It keeps your stomach from getting upset when you eat certain foods. I did an experiment. They're right. I can't eat too much cheese. If I eat too much cheese, it causes my stomach to get irritated. I was drinking 1 glass of wine or mead while my sister and my sister-in-law was making all those dishes that had cheese in them. Every meal that we had some kind of like cheesy pasta, cheesy rice, some kind of cheese. I had mead. The cheese didn't irritate my stomach. I think what irritated my stomach the most was all the vegetation, all the vegetables and whatnot. The next thing it says in this information I have, traveling. Now, nowadays, because of the pandemic and whatnot, the expense and whatnot, you can't always travel. But traveling does not always mean leaving your area. You can explore the world around you. I don't know that much about Rolla. And I don't know that much about all the different parks and destinations around Rolla that are for free. Except, it costs you gas and food. That's it. Then, in fact, there's other ways to see the world nowadays. Because, with fact, we have the web. I can go explore the world and learn about different places and study about different places without leaving my own home. But the Vikings were known for their traveling. They were known for exploring their environment and exploring new places. So I'm pretty sure when they mean by traveling, I don't think they mean, sit at your computer and learn about new places. No, I think what they mean by this is get out. Do something outside the house. Don't be a homebody. That's for the modern day Viking. Don't be a homebody. Eating like a Viking. Now, this also is part of what I read in my first one when I was talking about my new diet. The Vikings were known for eating meats and fishes. And what they had for meat-wise was pigs, goat, sheep, duck, geese, herring, flounder, various types of fish in the bays and the oceans around them. And once in a while, and I read this and I kind of went, what? I don't think I could do that. Once in a while, they used to, I kicked my table. Once in a while, they would have a feast. And for that feast, they would eat horse. Yes, folks, you heard me right. Horse. Mr. Ed used to be on the dining table of feasts at Viking festivals. They had cow. They did have beef. But here's the thing. Most of their cow that they had, except for maybe 1 or 2 bulls, were milking cows. So they would not just take a cow and slaughter it just because they wanted the beef. The milking cows would stay alive for a very long period of time. What they used to do, according to the information I read, is they would keep the cow until the cow could not produce milk. Usually the cow would stop producing milk after they were after their middle age, basically, after they've gotten to a certain age. They would stop producing milk, and that's when that cow would go to slaughter. And by the time that cow went to slaughter, usually a couple of its calves that were female were starting to produce milk, so they didn't have to worry about running out of milk, because milk was one of the many different drinks that they had at the time. They had water, milk, mead, and ale. That was their 4 drinks. Vegetables. They grew their own vegetables. They did have like cabbage and carrots, wheat, barley, and a third one, I can't remember which one. Wheat, barley, and rye. There we go, rye. Wheat, barley, and rye. Then they had their various wild mushrooms and onions and a few other different wild plants that they could eat. And they had the various wild fruits, like, can't remember if they had, no, the ones that I remember fruit-wise was like elderberry, gooseberry. They had like 4 different varieties of berries that you can find in that part of the northern hemisphere that grew wild. But for the modern day Viking, it says here, meats and fish, organic if possible, seasonal vegetables and fruits. Basically, anything and everything that has a season is what is good for us, as long as it's seasonal, or at least the person who is wanting to be a modern day Viking like myself. Their diets were high in protein. They had at least one meal with meat. Start the day with high protein, usually an hour after you wake up, if you can do that. And of course, I wrote myself a cliff note saying study up on high protein diets. Now, the Viking meal, they had the 2 meals per day, a morning meal and an evening meal. The morning meal was usually done an hour after they woke up. And 9 times out of 10, the morning meal consisted of leftovers, the leftover stew from the night meal the day before. So basically what they would do is they'd make a big pot of stew at nighttime. And everybody would have their portion or their fill, not like gluttonous. Basically, they would have one big, gigantic portion. And that was their end of the day meal. And the next morning, they would basically take what's left. And usually that stew was either a meat, some sort of meat or fish stew. And in the morning, what they'd do is they'd add extra vegetables or extra produce, some extra wheat or barley or rye, and turn it into a porridge. And they would eat that with a side of bread. And the bread was usually an unleavened bread made out of almost like a sourdough bread, made out of either the barley or the wheat or some kind of oat bread. Sounds kind of weird because like, ooh, why would I want to eat what I had last night in the morning time? Well, usually what you ate the night before kept warm in the cooking pot. Add a few extra vegetables and some wheat and barley and maybe some milk to make it into a porridge would make it taste a little bit different. Now, the seasonings of the time were like wild spices and whatnot. They had cumin. Not cumin. Maybe it was cumin. Cumin, cinnamon, sage, and a few other, native Scandinavian wild seasoning that you can go out and pick, basically. I think this is the last one. The last one I have written down is to look like a Viking. Now, the modern day Viking, we've seen plenty of them. You just don't realize it. Because, now, not by popular belief, but Vikings were very clean, well-groomed, well-maintained, clean people. They did not like being filthy. They were very clean people. They were neat, clean hair, clean beard. Vikings are clean and well-groomed people with long hair and beards. Grooms braided with beads. Now, their beads were anything from bone, wood, gold, or silver. In fact, Vikings also were very keen and fond of jewelry. Now, their jewelry consisted of like necklaces, armbands, bracelets, rings, amulets, made out of either wood, amber, gold, or silver. So right there, if they can form their jewelry into certain things out of those particular items, carved wood for bead work, or amulets, amber for like gemstones or whatnot, gold and silver to be turned into metal, to turn into armbands or rings. Right there, it basically says a lot, because it's like, really, if they did all that, they're very good craftsmen. And they were. They were good at doing what they did with their metals and their wood and their amber, basically. And a lot of times they adorn the jewelry with rune stones, emblems to depict their deities. Rune stones for protection, rune stones for guidance, rune stones for fertility, not rune stones, but rune markers, runes, for various different reasons. They adorn their homes with runes. They adorn their jewelry with runes. They carved wooden and stone rune plaques or whatever to put outside their home for blessing or protection or good harvest. The plentiful crops, whatever it was. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to become a Viking in the sense of the word that I'm going to, do all that. But you got to realize these people, their legends and their stories and their sagas have lasted millennium. They've lasted from the 800 AD period into today's life. And their minds to basically sit down and create homesteads and markers and stories and literature. Granted, their sagas and whatnot weren't written until somebody else wrote them for them. So there was probably a lot in translation lost. But to be mentally fearless, to be mentally capable of looking and seeming like a primitive group of people that can outsmart some of the smart people of Britain, some of the smart people of various parts of Europe, to basically find themselves in the trading center of the world, Istanbul, down in Turkey, to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder. Granted, they were taller than most of the Europeans and most of the people around them. In fact, they were described in various sagas or various pieces of literature from various other cultures as giants among men because they were taller and, they look like giants. They were built. Excuse the expression; it's an old expression, but they were built like brick shit houses. Sorry for the expression. Sorry for the word. But they literally look like men that could walk. To have royalty, to have people of power from foreign nations such as Turkey and Istanbul and various parts of the Middle East. Excuse my stuttering, but to have people of the Middle East that think that they like. The Middle East, I'm not putting them down. The Middle East had a lot of good, strong, smart, tactical warriors and whatnot. But to have rulers who can hire armies or have armies of men who were great warriors, hire these giants from the north to protect their treasury or protect their trade caravans going up the Silk Road to China, to have these men hired on to protect such wealth and riches and important things says a lot. And of course, if I was back then, the average height was for most of Europe or most of Eurasia or even most of Asia, the average height back then was anywhere from 4'5" to, and not 4'5" to almost 5 foot tall. In fact, I don't remember his full title, but everybody called him Longshanks from Braveheart from England, a very cruel and merciless ruler. He was considered tall amongst his own people, and he was only 5'2". But to look at these men from the north, where their average height, even back in the 800s, was 5'5", almost 6 foot tall, and you're 5 foot tall, and you're showing up in Istanbul, the trade capital of Europe, basically the trade capital of the Middle East, whatever you want to call it. All roads to lead to Istanbul. I'm sorry, if I was a ruler in any part of Europe and I had the ability to hire any man to guard my treasure, I'd be looking up at this giant going, you scare everything around you. I will pay you your weight in gold to protect my daughter. Yeah, I'm going to. Because it's like, people look at that and go, no, I'm not even going to draw a breath around them, let alone a blade. So, I mean, you got to realize the Vikings had that mindset of, I don't care who you are, I don't fear you. I don't care what you are, I don't fear you. I don't care what lays over that next mountain, I'm not going to fear it. In fact, I'm going to go looking for it to find out what it is. When you have that kind of mindset and that kind of attitude and that kind of walk, most people take note. I don't want people to take note, but I just don't want to be the people looking at me going, oh, yeah, whatever. I want to be taken serious. I've had a very good life. And for half of it, some people took me serious. But for the other half, people didn't take me serious. And I'm going to give you a point. And I'm going to look at the time because I have a feeling this is going to be, it's going to be a little bit of a long one. When I was growing up, and I know I've talked about this in other videos. When I was growing up in the military, as a child of the military schools or the military mindset or whatever you want to call it, basically because of my learning disability, which I don't use as a crutch. I used to, but now I don't. The military labeled me as dumb, slow, would never be able to get above his grade level, let alone be at his grade level. I had a lot of put downs by the military because of my learning disability, because they did not know how to diagnose ADD or dyslexia or hyperactivity or any of those things. At least not back in the 70s and 80s. It wasn't until my father retired from the military and I started going to a mainstream public school here in the States. And they found out what my problem was and started working with me and put me in special ed and all that. And I struggled for a couple more years. I struggled until until I got to high school. So I struggled for 4 to 5 grades worth of education and being held back a couple different times. So by the time I got into high school, I was 1 to 2 years older than most of the students, most of the other kids around me. But it wasn't until high school when I had a very good, don't do it. I had a very good teacher. I had a good reading teacher who basically said, your grade can go 2 ways. One is your testing, and 2, your reading, assignments. And I went, oh, great, I'm gonna fail this class, and I'm gonna have to get held back another year. I had all these different concerns. And then she said, your reading assignment is simple. As long as you read at least 2 books per semester. Or no, was it semester or quarter? I think it was quarter. No, 3 books per semester. 2 to 3 books per semester. And they have to be books, not comics, not graphic novels, no kiddie book. It has to be an actual novel. And I just kind of went, oh, great. And then she said to the class, you can either pick something from the room, and literally all 3 walls were covered in books. I mean, all kinds of different books. And I just kind of looked around the room like, okay, sure. Now, at first I was very apprehensive because I was like, I don't know what I can read. I don't know what I'm interested in. Well, looking through all the books, I got to one particular book, and let's just say the title spoke to me. Call of the Wild. Anybody who's been an average reader or has watched the different movies for Call of the Wild, you know the basis of the story. I didn't. It was just the title, Call of the Wild. And I went, okay, let's read it. Let's see if I get interested. Because I already knew from a young age I was very in tune to nature and wildlife and all that fun stuff. So I read it. And I was like, well, this is going to take me at least a month to read. No, it took me 2.5 weeks. I devoured that book. Now, the part that came next was a fear. A written essay? Yeah, okay, sure. Nope. I had the option, written essay or a verbal. No problem. Went up and did a verbal. Aced it. What's your next book? Oh, I don't know. There's nothing else on your shelves that catch my attention. Well, don't have to read what's on her shelves. I can go out and buy my own book or get one from the library. Well, I went to our local mall at the time and went into the bookstore. Walden Books, Paradise Valley Mall. I was looking. The first place I went was just like, well, none of these books are catching my attention. None of these books in the literature, drama, horror, any of that stuff. Science fiction, well, at the time I really didn't know what kind of science fiction I was into because I watched whatever Dad watched, and Dad watched mostly Westerns. John Wayne, whatever. So I went through, looking through the various books. Oh no, I wrinkled this. And I was in a section that I didn't even know. I didn't even look up at the section. I just walked, and then I was walking by the books. And I'll be honest with you, wasn't even the title that got me, because I wasn't even looking at the titles. I was just walking through because I was just aimless at that point in time. Well, call it what you want to. Spirit guide, guardian angel, archangel, whatever you want to call it. I was walking by the books and didn't even see the title. I just noticed the color. So I stopped. I went back. And I looked at the title. And it said Phantoms Afoot. And I pulled it out going, Phantoms Afoot. Don't know who Mary Summer Rain was, but I read the back. And I got very curious. Phantoms Afoot, Journey into the Night. And at first I was thinking some sort of weird horror story or something about somebody in the woods because of the picture. So I read it. Now at first I didn't quite understand what they meant by the fourth book in the best-selling season, which is, and it goes on to tell you what it's about. And I just kind of went, again, excuse the expression. Well, I'm not even going to use it. S and giggles. I'll just put it that way. S and giggles. I just kind of went, okay, I'll read it. And I'm thinking, well, that's a pretty thick book. A little bit thicker than Call of the Wild. It's going to take me a month to read it. 2 weeks. And then I took it. And because my teacher has never read anything by this author or anything of this accord, and she said, I'm going to have to take it home and read it, and then I'll come to you and talk to you about it. And I went, okay. Gave it to her. She read it in 3 days. Well, when you're an avid reader, you kind of read things quickly. I've learned that's over the past. And, gave her the essay. Pass it. Verbal. And then I went on to the next book. So by the end of my first year with her, which was actually my second year of high school, I had read every single Mary Summer Rain book that was out at the time, which was only 5 of them, because Earthquake just came out right towards the end of my 10th grade year, I think. Or did it? Well, I had read basically 3 to 4 of them by the end of that school year. So by the time I ended that school year and got my yearbook, which is buried away, so I can't read it, but she was very happy with me, very surprised because of all my previous information. So I got some surprising, a surprising note from her on that yearbook. And then when my next year came, my next year came, and every year for those of us who were in special ed have to get a certain kind of evaluation. Well, by the time, let's just put it this way, by the time I graduated in the middle of my 12th grade year on a GED, which I passed with flying colors the first time around, basically she had put in my records that by the time I ended my school year, by the time I ended my 11th grade, basically, this is for 11th grade, by the time I ended 11th grade, that I was reading material that was beyond high school, well into college level material, because most of the material I was reading was either Mary Summer Rain, which was classified in the bookstore as New Age spiritualism, and books on nature and geology and stuff that I could have used for college if I wanted to go into an earth science type of major, which the reason why I never made it into actual full-blown college is financial reasons, and the fact that I didn't think college would do me any good because the knowledge might be up here, but when it comes down to putting it on paper for a test or something like that, forget about it. I have extreme test anxiety. So that's one of the reasons why I never went into college. But I know from high school and all the stuff that I read, and some of the stuff I'm still reading, I don't think I'll have a problem with strengthening my mind. It's just getting back to that strong point that I once had. That's what I have to work on when it comes to the psychological or the mind aspect of my changes. My changes aren't really not going backwards, but going backwards to go forwards. And that might sound like a contradiction in terms, but really what it is I have to get my mind back to where it was when I was when I was getting finished or ending high school, and maintaining a strong mind. Now, I know I'm not going to have that much problems. It's just taking the time and effort that I need to put into it to, I don't know if I should say reread the Mary Summer Rain books, but I have 2 new ones to read. I have books up here I haven't even read yet. I have various Bible type books, and not the Bible itself, but more like I'm sorry, I'm losing that word now. Inspirational or Bible-based type books. Like I have the book from Courageous, The Resolution for Men. I have various Max Lucado books, things like that. So I have plenty of reading material. It's just forcing myself to do them, to read them. Anyhow, that's the mental changes. The next video, which probably won't be for a day or so, when I get a chance to sit down and do them, will be on the, I don't know if I should say spiritual or spiritual aspect of the changes I want to try to do, which they're more reinforcements than actual doing. So maybe that's all it is. Maybe I won't do the video. Maybe I will. It depends. Because then I can talk in depth of the books that I have to read. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I apologize. It's going to be at least close to an hour long. For those of you who don't want to sit there and watch the whole video, that's fine. You don't have to watch it. But you know what? Do me a service, and maybe it will help you. Even if you don't watch the actual video, you listen to it, and you might get some inspiration from it. I don't know. That is part of my purpose for trying to do this, is not just to chat or talk, but maybe inspire you, maybe inform you. Who knows? But before I end this, I wanted to show you a shirt that I was gonna wear. But what I wanted you to see is on the back of the shirt, so it wouldn't have mattered. Some of you might have seen me with this shirt, but on the back of this, it seems like just a regular old black t-shirt. It has a saying. It has a nice little saying. I don't know if you guys got the whole thing, but I'll read it to you. It says on here, and this is probably part of what it's going to be. I'm going to get more shirts like this for the spiritual aspect of changes. But anyhow, it says, the devil whispered, you can't withstand the storm. And on the bottom it says, and I wish I had the other one. On the bottom of this one it says, the Irishman replied, I am the fricking storm. There's another one that has almost the same thing, but it says, there's actually a couple of them. One says the Scotsman, the other one says it's the Viking. It's got different on the bottom, and you can put on, basically you can change it to whatever nationality you want to have. But I like the one that says the Irishman, because if you think about Irish people, they are kind of rambunctious and like fights and whatnot. So, but anyhow, I just wanted to read that real quick. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Any positive questions or comments, go ahead and put it in the comment box. I will try to get to them and reply as best as I can, or as quickly as I can. If you're new to my channel and you liked it and you want to see more, or you've watched some of my other videos and liked it and want to see more, go ahead and click down here on the left, down here somewhere, the subscribe button, and then a little bell will pop up and you can click on that, and that will tell YouTube to let you know when I've put in a new video. So until next time, God bless. Have a good day. Bye.